Have you ever been playing a video game and thought, man, what if my character really needed to go to the toilet right now? No? No one? Is that just me? Alright, well anyway, I did have that thought, so it spiraled into this extremely stupid idea where I wanted to see how fast can you find a toilet in every mainline Resident Evil game. It's one of those things I think speaks to the verisimilitude of a game's setting because, you know, real places that people live in tend to have toilets because people need them. So using this absolutely flawless barometer of realism, I will be assessing every Resident Evil game in order. So the quick ground rules: we have to find a toilet in every Resident Evil game. It has to be a man-made thing that you would use as a toilet. It doesn't necessarily have to be a porcelain throne, but a bush does not count. And I have to be able to actually get to the toilet. A dilapidated door that would theoretically lead to a bathroom also does not count. I will be covering every mainline Resident Evil game in release order, including their remakes, so without further ado, let's get to toileting. Well, just start the video. Starting with Resident Evil 1, this one is nice and quick. As you would expect, it takes place in a residential building that has evil in it, but also toilets. We start the game as Jill, and after getting through the intro cutscenes, we immediately break for this door to the East Wing, which can be immediately unlocked as Jill, but not as Chris, so picking Jill was a time-saving measure here. Heading straight through the dog hallway, we arrive at the bathroom on the East Wing, netting us our first toilet at 4 minutes in. However, notably, this is the only toilet in the entire mansion, so using this as my metric for realism is already crumbling, but persist I shall anyway. Now, on to Resident Evil 2. I actually know Resident Evil 2 extremely well relative to a lot of the classic Resident Evil games, so I knew exactly where the earliest toilet was going to be. However, this meant I had to blow through the entire police station section of the game as fast as I possibly could, because, shock horror, there are no toilets in this entire building or any of the streets leading up to it. No, really, not a single one. So I had to tap into my inner speedrunner real quick. I don't actually know the speedrun for this game, but I do know it pretty well. And I'm able to blitz through the entire police station and the upcoming sewers bit in around 20-ish minutes or so. This is where my specific rule that it has to be a man-made toilet-type structure comes into effect, because the sewers, do they count as a toilet? No. No, they don't. That's cheating. You're cheating. Stop that. What does count, however, after barreling 2/3 of the entire game in about 25 minutes, is this one toilet inside the cable car that you need to ride down to the lab. This is the only toilet in the entire game. It's a little blurry, given that we're dealing with an older video game here, but that is definitely a toilet, I think you will agree. In fact, there's even magnum bullets hidden in it in the American version of the game. There's a fun fact for you. You want to find magnum bullets? Look in a toilet. 30 minutes in, 2 toilets found, we're on good pace, and I start Resident Evil 3. Now, of the classic Resident Evils, Resident Evil 3 is the one I knew the least going in. It's just not one I've played anywhere near as much, but I thought, you know, it's set in Raccoon City for the most part. There's got to be at least one toilet somewhere. So after scanning the streets of Raccoon City up and down, entering the various businesses, you know, restaurants and such, thinking there must be a toilet in one of these, I come to a startling conclusion. No! Despite there being many businesses that would logically have a toilet in this space, I get through the entire initial city section of the game without finding a single one. Then we arrive at the clock tower, which I also scan up and down, and arrive at the conclusion, there's no toilets here either. After defeating the Clock Tower Nemesis boss fight and proceeding onto the Carlos section in the hospital, I have spent nearly a full hour on Resident Evil 3 without finding a single toilet in a game that takes place in a bustling city center. What were they cooking with this one? But okay, Carlos in the hospital. Surely there must be a toilet in the hospital. After once again proceeding up and down through all of the hospital's various rooms, I do not find one. And then I have a thought. Does Resident Evil 3 have no toilets in it? Now, all of the pre-rendered backgrounds in Resident Evil games like this are just images, so you can look up a list and look through them. So I did at this point. I looked through every single room that Resident Evil 3 has in image form and came to the conclusion that Resident Evil 3 doesn't have any toilets in it. Upon reaching this realization, I was forced to hang my head in shame, and after an hour and 10 minutes of wasting my time, call a mulligan on Resident Evil 3 and just move on. Jill and Carlos will have to shit in a bush because there is no place for them to do their business in Raccoon City, apparently. Next game. Code Veronica up to bat next, and this one is thankfully short but sweet to make up for Resident Evil 3 wasting an hour of my life. After getting through the initial introduction and darting past the graveyard zombies, we arrive at more of the prison area. And while I take an unnecessary detour that takes me to what I thought was going to be a toilet but is actually a shower, very different things, do not confuse the two, it will make your life harder, I am able to find this beautiful porcelain throne in, like, the 4th room you can get into in this game. Nice and quick, this one. And now we're on the remakes. They started remaking these games really early, huh? With the first Resident Evil remake, and this one is pretty much second verse same as the first. The floor plan is more or less the same as the original. Consequently, that means we do the same thing. We pick Jill, immediately beeline for the east wing of the house, and sure enough, toilet's right there. Another one down. So we move on to the next GameCube Resident Evil 0, and this one I thought would be a lot quicker than it was. For those of you who don't know, the initial segment of Resident Evil 0 takes place on a passenger train, and surely there would be a toilet on a passenger train somewhere. There are a couple of rooms that look like they might be bathrooms, but you can't get into any of them, so I cannot allow that per my strict hardcore rules. After becoming reasonably sure that the train did not contain any toilets in it, I did at least have a good idea where another one would certainly be, so I immediately began to rush through the train section of the game, countdown segment, boss fight and all, getting Billy and Rebecca thrown out of the train and shortly into the training facility. And from there, if you head to the west side of the training facility, there is in fact a beautiful arrangement of toilets. It's a bit dilapidated, but this is a fully equipped bathroom. Lovely stuff. You just don't see them like this in Resident Evil games anymore. And so we move on to the final GameCube Resident Evil, and the one that changed the series, Resident Evil 4. And this is one where I'm the least sure of my methodology regarding this video, because I could have sworn there was an outhouse you could find really early in this game, but I couldn't locate it for shit. Pun not intended. I have a distinct recollection of there being more makeshift toilet-type structures in this game, but upon actually playing it and really trying to comb over the environment looking for stuff, I came up blank. And furthermore, I was waylaid by the fact that my controller was not working when I streamed this for some reason. It just wasn't taking the input, so I had to play it with the fucked up keyboard bindings. And I am not very good at Resident Evil 4 to begin with, so this complicated matters significantly. I was due a problem game, I suppose, after 3 relatively quick ones. Awful. What button is it going to expect me to hit to dodge? What? Mouse. Both mouse buttons. In the end, I ended up playing through several chapters of the game, getting all the way to the chief's house before finally finding this, which I am a little conflicted about counting this, because that is clearly a urinal, right? But if you examine the structure directly, the game does call it a toilet, so if the game calls it a toilet, I guess that's good enough for me too, so I'm gonna count it because I have no idea if there's a second one in this game. We're about halfway through the total games now, in a little under 3 hours, so making good pace. So the next game up to bat, Resident Evil 5. I feel it's worth noting at this point I entered into this challenge without much of a game plan. I certainly didn't scope the location of toilets in advance. And Resident Evil 5 is a game I had absolutely no clue where the toilets might have been. I was doing this one with all of the New Game Plus stuff unlocked because resetting a save file in Resident Evil 5 is a huge pain in the ass. Which, thanks to the additional firepower of that, did give me time to check the initial horde fight area top to bottom and find absolutely no toilets. So press on I shall. I end up clearing all the way to the end of Chapter 1-2, still with no place to take a leak. But it's shortly into Chapter 1-3 where I find my reprieve, although I wander around a bit, not really quite sure what I'm looking for. Because the building that contains what I think is the game's first toilet, you kind of walk straight past it, it's a little side room you gotta duck into. Now, these are squat toilets rather than the porcelain thrones we're used to in the West, but nevertheless, a toilet is a toilet, and count it I shall. Which gets me onto the final co-op Resident Evil game in this video, Resident Evil 6, which my chat seemed to be dreading more than I was. Which incidentally, I streamed this whole thing on my Twitch at twitch.tv/punchy. These are the kinds of stupid things I do sometimes. This is the game in this run that has the most potential for improvement because I absolutely did not location scout this one in advance. I picked the Leon and Helena campaign just kind of randomly. There might be an earlier toilet in one of the other campaigns, I simply don't know the game well enough to assess that, but I reasoned that the Leon campaign would be a good place to start because it begins in a university campus, and surely there would be a toilet on a university campus, right? Somewhere. As it transpires, as has been a running theme in this video, no. No, there isn't. There are quite a few rooms that look like they might lead to toilets, but as they are all blocked off, inaccessible, or destroyed, I didn't count any of them. Even when getting to the subway portion of the game, which again, surely there would be a toilet somewhere in a subway station, still nothing. Also, I hate this portion of the game. I know a lot of people hate Resident Evil 6 in general. I'm actually not that much of a hater, but I definitely hate this train section. How does this hit me? What are you fucking talking about? It's in the segment where you need to hold out in a gun shop where I really think I made the wrong decision regarding choice of campaign, because this siege section goes on for ages, and I am actively kind of zoning out in the middle of it. But with no toilet yet found, I end up completing the entire first chapter. But I am granted release shortly into Chapter 2, which opens in a graveyard, where relatively quickly, one finds a building that contains this absolutely fucking massive unit of a toilet. Ah, bathroom! Yeah! Get me the fuck out of here! My joy is palpable. Although seriously, look at how big this thing is in relation to Helena. Why is the toilet like twice as big as she is? What the fuck? Resident Evil 6 ended up taking me a full hour to locate a toilet, and that can't be the fastest way of going about it. If you want to take on this challenge yourself, consider scouting the other campaigns to see if you can find a faster one. Now, Resident Evil 7 ended up surprising me because I definitely knew that we were going to get a toilet relatively quickly in this one. The place is actually built like a real house that people would live in. There are bathrooms in fairly logical places, but what surprised me is that there's actually one even earlier than I expected. Before even getting out of the intro of the game and meeting Mia for the first time, there's a toilet directly in front of her cell. I wouldn't trust this thing to be hooked up to any of the plumbing, but that is a porcelain throne. It is there. It counts. So, in 7 minutes, Resident Evil 7 completed. Now we're on to the other PlayStation 1 Resident Evil remake, starting with 2-make, and continuing the trend of clearing very quickly. This one is also over in basically no time at all. Perhaps in response to people's slightly sarcastic observations that it's weird that the entire police station doesn't have a single toilet in it in the original Resident Evil 2, Capcom plunked a new one right into the east wing of the building, which you can get to very quickly, especially if you start the game on the second run mode. And in fact, 2-make is our new fastest toilet, taking only 4 minutes. But it doesn't get to hold the record for long, because rolling straight into Resident Evil 3 Remake, this one takes 1 minute. Maybe not even that from hitting new game. I counted the time it took me to change between games. Because the first thing that happens in Resident Evil 3 Remake is you start the game in Jill's apartment in first person, and you walk into her bathroom. Done and dusted. Go next. GG. Shake my hand, but let me wash it first. Which I accept as a blessing because I don't want to play any more of Resident Evil 3 Remake than I have to. But the speedy times just keep on rolling, since the next game, Resident Evil Village, a game I actually do quite like, starts off pretty similarly. You begin the game with Ethan in his family home, and a family home does in fact have a normal bathroom that you can just walk into. Job's a good 'un. Done and dusted. Next. I ended up barreling through 4 games worth of toilets in about 15 minutes, so making excellent pace on the run up to the end here. But the final game on this list, Resident Evil 4 Remake, put a stop to that. Once again, it feels like a testament to the power of the imagination when envisioning these kinds of spaces, because I had it in my head that, again, there were more outhouse-type spaces in Resident Evil 4, or at least they would have been included in the remake even if they weren't present in the original. But no, there aren't. In fact, I end up playing through pretty much the exact same portion of game that I do on the vanilla version. Clearing the opening horde section, completing the first couple chapters, getting all the way to the chief's house, where we conclude with... toilet. Toilet. Yep. Intruding on that guy actually using one of the toilets that we worked so hard to find. But it's in the same place, and this one, unlike the vanilla counterpart, definitely is a toilet. That's not a missized urinal. But there you have it. Toilets in every mainline Resident Evil game, except for 3 because there wasn't one, found in a little under 5 hours. What does this prove? Absolutely nothing, other than that a surprising amount of these games do not have toilets in locations where it would make sense to have them. This is an outrage. These games are not realistic. I demand more realistic toilet placement in my Resident Evil games. Capcom, make it happen for Resident Evil 9 or Code Veronica Remake or whatever the bloody hell it is you guys are doing next. Thanks for watching this one to the end. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel, and let me know if you know about any earlier toilets in any one of these games. See if we can really refine this rundown. Now, if you excuse me, I need to pee. See you later.